What if Zacchaeus had never come down out of that tree? What if Zacchaeus had not responded to the Lord's call to come down and to allow the Lord to enter into his house? Zacchaeus' story would have looked much different. I imagine that he would have still continued to prosper materially. He might have even still continued to extort more than people owed on their taxes, to continue to live this life that he had been living. But would he experience the happiness, this joy that he experienced because he came out of the tree? No, probably not. He probably would have been much more like the rich young man who went away sad when the Lord told him that he should give away all of his possessions and follow Jesus. And I think it's interesting that this passage of the rich young man comes right before the story of Zacchaeus in Luke's gospel. The two are very close to one another. We have this rich young man who goes away sad, and then we have Zacchaeus, who shows us the positive response of being able to give away one's possessions and to experience the salvation that God has to offer us. And the first step of discipleship is a grateful response. And so we see Zacchaeus being a model for us of stewardship, of this grateful response, of hearing his name called and coming down from his tree. It's always interesting for me to think about and to pray about this image of the sycamore tree. Yes, Zacchaeus climbed it initially because he wanted to see Jesus. But I think this tree can represent to us the life of comfort that we're used to. It's hard sometimes to come out of the tree and respond to the Lord in our life. Up in the tree, we're safe. We're okay. We can see everything going on, but I don't necessarily have to respond and interact with the world around me. Sometimes we climb up in our own tree because we want to see Jesus, but only at a distance. It's like, okay, Lord, don't come any closer. That's close enough. I can see you just fine from up here. No thanks. I don't need to come down. I'm all right up here, comfortable in my tree. But the Lord's calling us to something much greater, not to just see him from afar, but to walk with him. He wants to come into our house, to come into our hearts. He says, Zacchaeus, I must come into your house. Not I want to, not it would be nice if we had dinner together. I must come into your house. And we know that to be true. We know that the Lord wants to be in our house as well because we've all gathered here today. We've all gathered here today to celebrate the Eucharist, to receive the Lord into our hearts. Some of us might have come today because of a must, because of an obligation. Well, it's Sunday. I must go to church. But the must isn't just because we need to check a box. It's recognizing that reality that the Lord wants to be in our heart so that he can change us, so that he can transform us. This grateful response of Zacchaeus opens up this door of possibilities of how the Lord can enter into his heart. And we see that the Lord worked in an incredible way because he promises to give away half his possessions, to pay back fourfold what he had extorted from others. That is a tremendous change of heart. But it would have been hard to carry out. I'm sure after Jesus left, he's like, did I really say that? Did I promise to give away half of my possessions? What was I thinking? But again, turning back to stewardship, the discipline of stewardship is what helps us keep that fire burning. This fire was lit in Zacchaeus' heart. And so after the Lord left, he would have had to have some way to continue stoking the fire. It would not have been possible for him to give half of his possessions away if he did not continually fuel that fire with prayer, of recalling how the Lord was in his house, of keeping those things connected together. If he just starts giving away his possessions, he's going to think, why am I doing this? What's the point? But if it's connected to that encounter with Christ, it's given meaning, it's given purpose. And the same goes with our practice of stewardship, of our time, our talent, our treasure. These disciplines are necessary because it helps us build that virtue and habit. Without discipline, without guidelines, we're not able to build that habit. But without the encounter, we lose sight of why we're even doing those disciplines. Again, they become just a box for us to check off. But if we remember how the Lord wants to come into our house, how he must come into our hearts, if we're able to keep our sacrifice of time, talent, and treasure connected to the sacrifice of the Holy Mass that we celebrate each Sunday, then all of a sudden our life of prayer, our relationship with God is allowed to blossom and to breathe. And so, brothers and sisters, I encourage you today, have the courage to respond. Have the courage to come down out of our trees, out of what's comfortable, and to follow the Lord into a deeper way of living. When the Lord called St. Peter, what did he tell him but to be not afraid and to cast into the deep? We must be the same. We must be not afraid to courageously accept this invitation to come down and to hear the Lord say to each and every one of us, today I must stay in your house.